A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Mandy Worby is joining us. On a Wednesday, we'd like to keep up with some of the things that are breaking news-wise that come out of Israel and more broadly across the Middle East. And inevitably, there's a mainstream narrative and there's a Christian narrative which does look to the welfare of God's chosen people, the people of Israel. And so we might be wondering what's been happening because the headlines have been dominated, Mandy. Oh, welcome especially first.
Nice to be with you.
But, the headlines have been dominated, haven't they, around the images of, babies that look emaciated, starving, and the whole world is having a shock reaction to that right now.
Yeah.
What's your impression as you're looking at some of the facts behind the scenes around these images that are circulating around the world?
Well, the problem is that a lot of people have, you just used the word impression. A lot of people have impressions, but what is the truth? This is the real crux of it here. And we're talking specifically about a photograph of this skeletal baby, and it's gone around the world like wildfire, and the claim is, and the accusation is that Israel is starving the children of Gaza. But nobody questioned the photograph, nobody challenged the story or the journalist who reported it, nobody, not a single person, until it was investigated, okay? When it was investigated, what was found was that, first of all, the photograph was cropped in. When that crop feature was removed from the original photo, it showed a toddler also standing beside his mum, and that toddler was perfectly healthy, plenty of flesh on his little body, not sick at all. The mother herself was not malnourished or anything like that, only the baby on her lap. It turns out, we see those, Neil, we see those images and it's horrifying. Nobody wants to see that, ever. But what is the truth? That little baby, 1.5-year-old baby, his name is Mohammed al-Mutawak. He suffers from a muscular disorder. Now, what actually surprised me is that eventually the truth came out and it was reported on CNN. That actually shocked me that they were the ones who took to report the truth. But prior to that, the information about his, it's a genetic illness that he's got, that was withheld. That little boy is suffering from a genetic illness, and it was ignored in the mainstream media. There is another photograph, there's lots of them actually, photo of a little boy also claimed to be starving. He also has a genetic disease. He is now currently being treated in Italy. I posted another image this morning on my social media revealing a mother who herself was certainly not malnourished by any stretch of the imagination, holding her son who looked to me to be about between maybe 10 and 12, like the skeletal condition of him was, to me, it was so severe it looked like it was AI. That's a photo from Yemen. It's not even from the Gaza Strip. And there are images floating all over the internet at the moment. They're from Syria, the Syrian civil war from over a decade ago. But their claim is that these are the poor suffering Gazan children at Israel's hand. So it's a propaganda war. Israel is losing it because Israel doesn't engage in this stuff. And social media and the secular media just grab this stuff, and next thing you know, it's around the world within seconds.
Okay, well, it leads us to what's happening so far as the aid that is given to those who are in Gaza. And, I've seen those sorts of images too on the mainstream media. And there's been stories around over these past few weeks about even sending aid in by way of airdrops.
Israel did that just the other day.
Which I assume is around the idea of short-circuiting, the idea that someone might get their hands on that and not let it get through to the people because if it's an airdrop, it's getting
Israel
through
has
to the
been
people.
airdropping it because there's so much aid that's just sitting there that the United Nations isn't distributing. They're supposed to be distributing it, and the United Nations refuses to distribute it because they like working with Hamas. Nobody wants to say that, but that is the truth. And there is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, headed by Johnny Moore, and I mentioned this last time. They've been feeding half of Gaza's population. They are trying to communicate with the UN every day. They never miss a day to say, if you can't distribute all of that aid that's just sitting there, then let us distribute it for you. the United Nations won't even respond or acknowledge that they've been given a net. Now, I've just shown you a picture, a partial picture of the amount of aid that's just sitting there. Doesn't include so much of it. This aid is growing all the time because it's coming into Gaza. It's not being distributed by the UN. The Gazan population are nothing more, and this sounds terrible, but they are a cudgel in the hands of the United Nations with which to beat Israel. They say they love these people and want to care for them. They say they're starving and they're hungry, yet all this aid and the UN refuses to distribute it. It's shocking.
And I'm looking at that picture now that you've put in my hands, and yes, it looks like a vast open space filled with all sorts of containers.
Thousands and thousands of pallets of aid. Neil.
Yep. So, and a little bit of a headline underneath it. The real starvation in Gaza is of truth. The claim there, it's Hamas stealing the aid, embedding in civilian areas, using hunger as a weapon of war,
yes,
and still holding the hostages captive.
Yeah. I've got video footage this morning that I just saw where there is such a surplus of flour, which is the basis for bread and a whole lot of Middle Eastern foods. They've got such a glut of flour that the Gazans are now just tipping the flour out and using the sack to go and collect candy and other stores and other foods. That is so that all the aid that's coming in. There's no shortage of food. I'm telling you, there's no shortage of food. None at all.
All of this now, Mandy, is fueling the push for a two-state solution. And you've got France, now you've got the UK has come out overnight. Yep. Their plans to recognise Gaza and the Palestinian people as a nation. What's your thought around
well, France has just come out and said that they're recognising a Palestinian state. The Brits are now basically giving Israel an ultimatum, stop the war or by September or we'll recognise a Palestinian state, as if Israel is frightened of Keir Starmer. And I've got to say this, at the moment Britain looks like it's going down the gurgler. He can't control his own nation. Do you think Israel wants to take advice from him? It's not going to happen. It's not going to make... Over 100 nations have actually recognised a Palestinian state. But here's what the whole world is ignoring. In order for there to be an agreement between two parties, both parties have to agree, right? Israel has ceded land many times and all they got was terrorism as a response. They're not willing to do that now. But you've got to understand the worldview, the ideology that drives Hamas and the PLO, I might add. But I've got some quotes for you from the Hamas's own charter. Okay? Article 6 of the Hamas charter says that means Hamas, strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. That means every inch of Israel. Article 8 says, jihad is its path and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes. Article 11 says that the Islamic resistance movement, that's Hamas, believes that the land of Palestine is an Islamic endowment consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. It goes on to say, it or any part of it should not be squandered. It or any part of it should not be given up. Neither a single Arab country nor all Arab countries, neither any king or president nor all kings and presidents, neither any organisation nor all of them, be they Palestinian or Arab, possess the right to do that. That means nobody has the right to give up even an inch. Article 13 says initiatives and so-called peaceful solutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement. They say knowing the parties constituting the conferences, their past and present attitudes toward Muslim problems, Hamas does not consider these conferences capable of realising the demands. Article 15 says the day that enemies usurp part of Muslim land, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim, and they believe Israel has usurped Muslim land, even though it's been Israel's land for over 4,000 years, long before Islam was even invented. Now, again, France has just recognised a Palestinian state. Others are threatening to do the same thing. But the PLO, they've actually got virtually the same charter. They just do everything in a suit rather than in terrorist fatigues. Their plan is we will get a concession of this bit of land and then that bit of land and then that bit of land, and bit by bit we'll use that to launch attacks to get all the land. They both have the same goal. They refuse to have a two-state solution because it's been offered 5 times and they've rejected it. So while the world is trying to force this on Israel, they're completely ignoring the fact that the so-called peace partner Israel is supposed to be having an agreement with won't have a two-state solution. All the pressure is on Israel, none on the terrorists.
And, as you say, this has been put forward many a time where Israel has actually moved towards a two-state solution.
Many times.
And it's not Israel that's been the blockage there.
No.
It's been the Palestinians.
Absolutely,
So,
every time.
So when you've got these international leaders, Emmanuel Macron in France and you've got Sir Keir Starmer in the UK and, what does that do when these international renowned leaders speak up and they're pro-Palestinian and it's appearing to be anti-Israel? It does seem to embolden the
It emboldens
the
Hamas. It means they can walk away from any kind of negotiation or any kind of conversation about coming to a ceasefire agreement. They go, no, we'll just hang on until September and then another nation will declare that we have a Palestinian state. We'll just keep ignoring. Unfortunately, because of the attitude of the whole world, basically, they have actually emboldened and encouraged Hamas to not have any agreement with Israel, to not lay down its arms, not give back the hostages, but to hang on until the world forces Israel to capitulate. And now you've got the whole world saying, no, give them a state. Give Hamas a state. So that's a reward for all their terrorism, and that is abhorrent.
And there's a lot of nations that are actually recognising there's a simple way of ending the conflict, laying down weapons, getting Hamas out of Gaza, releasing the hostages, and, some people think it's just too simplistic, but this is the sticking point, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other nations that are recognising that. They're calling for an opposite reaction.
Shockingly, this is really shocking to me this morning, is that Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Egypt have both, or 3 of them, not both, 3 of them have actually signed a declaration calling for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza. What they're hoping is that if Hamas is not there and the weapons are no longer a problem, then there can be a two-state solution and there can be an independent Palestinian state. Neil, I just read from the charter of Hamas and the attitude of the PLO, what's in their own charter. They don't want a two-state solution because as soon as they agree to a two-state solution, their goals of taking the entire land for themselves is no longer valid. They cannot agree to that. They want it all. So this sounds great. It was, as I said, it was Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, 17 other nations, plus the EU and the Arab League, all giving backing to this proposal. It's not going to happen because Hamas cannot. They cannot.
Mandy, what are your thoughts on relationships between Israel and the Europeans?
Okay, this is we'll finish on this. This is very interesting. Everything has to do with energy. At the end of the day, everything is energy and trade. The European Union, all of the Europeans have been dependent for decades on Russian energy. Okay. Then, of course, they went woke. We've got to go green. So in order to get green infrastructure established in Europe, well, guess who decided to become the supplier of green infrastructure? Russia. So if you're not buying gas and oil from them, you're buying green infrastructure. But the green infrastructure is inefficient and it fails all the time. So to buffer their energy needs, they're going back to Russia. They don't want to be in bed with Russia anymore because Putin is now persona non grata. So they've got to get their energy needs from elsewhere. Well, guess what? Israel has huge natural gas resources. There's also a lot of trade deals between European nations and Israel. Now, Israel does need Europe, but Europe needs Israel more than the other, okay? So what's happening now is the Europeans are saying we might start, cutting ties with Israel. They've already cut some big agreement they had with R&D, which might hurt Israel initially, but Israel leads the world in R&D, research and development. So this is actually bad for Europe. But here's the sticking point. If Israel says, well, okay, Europe doesn't want to play anymore, we are now going to withdraw all these trade deals. We'll go elsewhere. They could go to India. They've got a good relationship with India. They could go to China. They'll certainly work with the US, right? There's other nations that they'll work with. That leaves Europe floundering, but it would also, get this, it would also mean the collapse of the PLO or the PA overnight, because the Palestine Bank, right, based in the territories, gets all of their foreign funding through European banks. If Israel sanctions the European banks, no funding can make it into the Palestinian bank accounts, and the Palestinian Authority, they don't generate their own income. They get all their funding is 100% from the rest of the world. They are not viable on their own, and that would mean they collapse overnight. So the Europeans, there's a lot of bluster, but I don't know that they will actually follow through on this, because it would actually be very bad for them.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, there's some deeper things in that, and some more developments that may well just enter the headlines in the next little while, because those sorts of relationships obviously very, very important. Mandy Worby, thank you so much for taking some time to update us today on all of the ups and downs, the ins and outs, the new things, and certainly a different perspective than what you're getting in the mainstream media around issues to do with Israel. Thanks so much for that update today.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.